Hello and welcome to a new video. Today we are ready some stories from r/today IFD up. Let's get into the stories. Today I fade up by trying to confront my mother. From Throwaway Mum. I, 17F, have always had a bit of a rocky relationship with my mother, 52F. Most of the time she is a wonderful person to be around and she showers me with gifts, hugs and attention. However, she has an awful temper, being quick to anger and slow to forgive. When she is angry, all hell breaks loose and either she'll ignore me for days on end or hurl abusive language at me non-stop. She is extremely loud, and this has been a nightmare in public settings. A few years back we went on a family holiday to Turkey. We were exiting our car and I had left my bag inside, and in her anger she screamed at me in the middle of a public street and around 24 people saw. I was mortified. She then very loudly started complaining to some of the locals about me, saying how they should never have children because they'll only grow up to be checked out assholes like me. A few months later I was Skyping with a couple of my friends who are overseas, and she started cursing at me at the top of her lungs, and I can't even remember the reason why. She's humiliated and loudly reprimanded me in front of other people and then complained to them, saying things about me that aren't true. I get easily overwhelmed in crowds, and she's loudly mocked me for this, saying I should just get over it and that I'm an oversensitive loser. She's yelled and criticized me in front of my friends and people I respect more times than I can count, and has screamed at me, or dragged me around by the ear or hair in malls and parking lots in front of random strangers. As a result, my confidence has taken a dive. I can't go out in public without feeling immense shame and embarrassment, even if nothing has happened. I can't properly make eye contact with people without feeling like I'm going to be yelled at, and I always avoid social situations as much as possible. My mother hasn't hurt me in this way for the past year, and has mostly mellowed down, being the normal mother who I love. However, I still cannot stand to be in public with her because I constantly feel terrified that I am going to anger her and she'll end up hurting me again. My mother has noticed my weird behavior around her and has asked me about it. I told her the truth, saying that I can't handle going out with her in public because of what has happened in the past. I didn't say this with much tact and ended up pouring out my feelings in an incoherent mess. This did not work and only made her very, very angry. My mother has pointed out that she hasn't done the things I've complained about in over a year and that I should stop bringing it up, and told me that I am incredibly privileged and spoiled and have had a wonderful childhood for the most part. I agree that I've been incredibly lucky to have been born into a financially stable family who have taken care of me, but I would just like some acknowledgement and some sort of apology for how I was treated in the past, even if my mother has since changed. She's now ignoring me and I don't know what to do. I've fucked up big time. TLDR, my mother has embarrassed me in public multiple times in the past and I tried to get her to acknowledge that what she did was wrong and it backfired. She's now giving me the silent treatment. Edit, thank you to all who have replied to this post. I haven't had the chance to respond to everyone, but I greatly appreciate all who have given me advice and those who have even shared their own stories. I'm on the verge of tears because it's amazing to know that I'm not crazy in how I feel, and that there are others who understand. Today I fade up by taking LSD and going to church. From Southern AT. Classic Tafua, not today but almost 10 years ago. I was young and dumb and in high school and had bought a few tabs off of one of my sketchier friends. Me, being the classic angsty atheist high schooler, figured I'd take them when my family leaves early for church and enjoy it while they're gone for the day. I'd read onset for the LSD was 1 to 2 hours, so I took them around 7 a.m. and my family would leave around 8. Well, 9 a.m. rolls around, nothing. Then 10, nothing. I'm pissed at this point and figure my friend sold me fake shit. Another buddy calls me, the good Christian boy, and asks if I want to go to church with him. I say yeah, why not? I don't have plans anymore apparently, and it's good to hang out with friends. Well, it's about 11 and we're in church, and suddenly I start to feel a buzzing inside my head. Colors start to change, the music starts to sound really good. I'm internally freaking out because here I am, surrounded by strangers in church, now becoming high as balls. Managed to keep my cool through the service. The minister had 5 faces at one point and skin made of water. The sanctuary couldn't decide whether it was big or small, so it kept changing. When my buddy finally took me home, I pretended I was sick so we wouldn't have to interact. Then I went to my favorite spot in the woods by the river and enjoyed the rest of the trip. TLDR took fake acid and went to church. Acid wasn't fake, service was amazing. Today I fade up by expressing my feelings towards my best friend. From Really Act 21. Happened a few days ago, but I'll start by giving some context. For the last 4 to 5 years I've been friends with a couple, let's call them Josh, 29M, and Steph, 24F, and they have 2 kids, 1 and 3. Around year 1, Steph introduces me to a friend and we hit it off. End up spending a little over 3 years with her, had a kid, but it just didn't work out. They both helped, but Steph, specifically, I think, was what really helped me realize I needed to leave. I won't really go into context there. I should point out now that I currently live with my parents and supporting my daughter. Now during the last 2 or 3 years, Josh has turned into a bit of an asshole. Calls her and the kids names, just generally toxic to be around. They've broken up dozens and dozens of times for the stupid things he says and does, but she just ends up going back because she has nowhere else to go. I should point out now that Steph and I have never really had a thing with each other. We've just always had a brother/sister type relationship. But since I left my last relationship, I could tell pretty quickly there was some random sexual tension building up. For 2 months we've basically been flirting on such a low-key level, but I think it's all in my head. Anytime I sit next to her, I just get this huge rush. However, I knew my boundaries, thought it was all in my head, and really tried to suppress it. A few nights ago, Josh pushed it a little too far and Steph left with the kids to her mom's. We find out the next day that Josh called his dad and is getting picked up over the weekend. He has no car and will be leaving for 6mo 1 year to re-evaluate his life. This hits Steph pretty hard as it actually is real now, and he's really leaving. She ends up working out a plan for all of her stuff, getting a storage unit, starts packing. Then that night, the fuck up happens. She comes over with the kids to chill, vent, drink a little and hang out. Most of it was pretty fine until out of nowhere she mentions how there's been a ton of sexual tension. And we just kinda unload and talk about all these feelings and attractions to each other. I couldn't believe it. However, we recognize that it's a very complicated situation, and neither of us are ready to jump into anything first. So we decide to just kinda see where it goes. She leaves, we talk a bit before bed, and I go to bed with the worst blue balls I've had in years. Next morning she calls me up and tells me he's no longer leaving, he's changed his mind and wants to work it out again, and she's stuck in this weird spot now, but her only option is to just stay. So now we're trying to go back to normal, even though it's all out in the open now. Ick how I feel RN though. TLDR. Best friend of 5 years going through a bad breakup. We ended up confessing to each other, and now they aren't breaking up. Today I fade up by peeing my friend with benefits bed. From Ninja Boobies. Okay, so for context, this actually happened a few months ago when my BF and I were not dating and had just started hanging out. I, 20F, was sleeping over in his bed, 21M, let's call him Alex for the sake of the story. So I was sleeping and dreaming about a beautiful bathroom. The toilet was gold and there were diamonds on the walls, so in my dream I'm like, hell yeah, let me pee on this toilet. I start peeing only to slowly wake up and realize I'm afar peeing in this man's bed. I started texting a couple of my girlfriends like, WTF do I do? I really didn't want to wake him up and tell him because we hadn't been hanging out that long and I really liked him. Now Alex sweats like you wouldn't believe at night, often waking up in a puddle of his own sweat, so I'm like, I can definitely get away with this. I put a towel down on top of the wet spot and push him over so he won't touch it and go back to sleep. When he woke up later that morning, I said good morning and then I'm like, go to the bathroom, you need to pee, and somehow he agreed. I was like, damn, it was really that easy? I stripped his bed quickly, and when he returns I'm like, yeah, your bed is getting stink, I'm gonna wash your sheets. He thanked me, and then a month later I told him what had happened. He laughed about it and still teases me to this day lightheartedly, and now we are dating, so I guess it all worked out. TLDR, I peed in my future boyfriend's bed because I dreamt I was peeing in a fancy bathroom, and I stripped the bed without him realizing I had ever peed. Today I fade up by starting a feud between two churches. From Original Tank 5357. This was actually a few years ago, but I was recently reminded of this and it made me chuckle. It may sound a little bogus, but I promise this is all true. Buckle in, this is going to be a little bit of a long one. All names are changed so I don't out anyone, though I'm sure any of my friends would be able to pick me out of this one, tongue sticking out. And English is my main language, so if there are mistakes, I just suck. When I, 28M, was attending university, I leaned heavily into my musical hobbies. Playing instruments, singing, recording, if it had to do with music or sounds, I was there. I mainly played the drums, but I was also teaching myself how to play chords on the piano so I could sing along. I attended a school that was decently well known in the area for its community, which in reality is really closed off to the real world and does not help people develop healthy expectation for how the world works. That's a whole nother thing. In high school, I played drums on my school's worship team as I really liked the idea of playing in a band, and my friends at uni got wind of my previous experience and urged me to join the school's team. I thought sweet, more music playing, and signed up. I played on the school's worship team for 3 years and even got to perform at several churches in a different province, Canada. At some point during my time at uni, one of my friends, who was the worship leader for a local church, asked me if I would like to play drums for their team as their drummer needed to step down. I told him I was honored and would be happy to. Sidebar: one thing to note was that I was a broke college student and couldn't really afford to have a whole ensemble of different sticks for drumming. I really just had my one set of Vic Firth sticks that was gifted to me when I graduated high school. I also played the cajon, a box drum that you use your hands to play, and my hands were a bit callous/numb. As a result, I used my hands and fingers a lot when playing the drums, like using a finger to crescendo my crashes or to use the flats of my fingers or fingertips to play quieter or dulled floor toms. Back to the story. My addition to the team was met with a very positive response. People loved my style of playing, and I had been playing with worship teams enough that I could easily drive the band when needed and read the room to see what would come next. I had a great time with the team, and my friends quickly started coming to the services I would play. About 6 months after I started, the church decided they wanted to get a backup team in case any one of us needed a Sunday off or couldn't make it to service. So our second worship team was formed, and they were great. They were all great musicians and was super happy to work alongside them. I was able to have a Sunday or two off a month now for school or work. One evening I was hanging out with another friend of mine, who was attending another local church, told me that she saw me play and asked if I could give her drummer some pointers as he's newer and really nervous about playing in front of others. Having had previously gotten over terrible stage fright, I was happy to help. When I showed up to their practice, which they had on Thursday evenings, the guy never showed. Later we learned that even the thought of playing on stage for practice was too much for him, so he stepped down. My friend, we'll call Steph, was at a loss as they just lost their drummer. I was off at church A that week, so I offered to play for her for this week. She was elated and we got to practicing. Steph and I played together previously, so our musical styles were in sync. Practice went great and we were all set for Sunday morning service. Well, Sunday comes around and my friends from church A get wind that I'm playing at church B and show up there instead of A. I guess the service that most of the university students go to was very sparse, and the pastor, we'll call Steve, wanted to know what was up and calls me in the afternoon. I tell him I was playing for my friend at church B, and I guess people came to see what the service was like. I could tell he was unhappy. You see, both Stephen and Jeff, church B pastor, had butted heads in the past as they both started up right around the same time and are only a couple block away from each other. I don't know all the details behind the two of them, but I was told it had something to do with their respective wives. I never heard anything beyond that. Anyway, this ended up with Stephen using church B during his sermons as an example of what not to do. Jeff heard about this and started a small smear campaign with information about Stephen's college shenanigans and how they weren't very godly, though some of those stories were definitely godlike. I realized I had made a mistake, so I left both ministries and not play for either of them. My bandmates definitely understood, but didn't end up finding a good replacement for a while. My buddy who lives in the area told me that years later, the two of them are still pastors at their respective churches and their feud has not stopped, but has calmed down a little bit. These days, I mostly just keep my music to my friends and those close to me. TLDR, I played the drums for my friends at 2 different churches. The pastors of each church had beef with each other, and when people migrated from one church to the other, reignited a feud between them that has lasted for several years now. Thank you for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe for more Reddit comment videos. Check the description for the original post from Reddit. Good luck to everyone today.